Jesus uses a certain phrase in the New Testament Gospels a few different times, a phrase that might seem backwards or illogical to us. Jesus says, the first will be last, and the last will be first. Here we're going to talk about what he means by that in Mark chapter 9. But he also uses the phrase in Matthew chapter 20. And there he tells a parable of a vineyard owner who has workers come into the vineyard at the beginning and the middle and at the end of the day. But then the vineyard owner pays them all the same wages, and they grumble against one another because they think that they might get paid more for working the longer hours. But this parable is a vertical relationship between God and us. The reward that is given at the end of the day is an analogy to heaven, our heavenly wage or heavenly reward. Whether we come to faith early in our life or the middle of our life or at the end of our life, we all get paid the same heavenly reward. And it's okay for God to do that because God can be gracious. And we shouldn't be envious simply because God is generous. That's how Jesus ends that parable. But we also shouldn't take that parable out of context and think that it applies to employers and employees, thinking that an employer can pay an employee whatever he thinks with regard to his own favoritism. There are plenty of Bible verses that talk about how we should be people of justice, fairness, and equality. And we should pay people according to their work in the horizontal relationship, even though the vertical relationship is different. But Jesus, in saying the first will be last and the last will be first in Mark chapter 9, takes it even another step up. We're supposed to go the extra mile, not just justice, equity, and equality giving to people, but serving people even more. Because in that passage, the disciples of Jesus are grumbling against one another. And Jesus calls them out and says, "What are you arguing about?" And they come clean and they say, "We are talking about who is going to be greatest in the kingdom of heaven." And they're thinking about who is going to be the most popular or famous or have the most power or these sorts of things. And Jesus says, no, you have it all wrong. The last will be first, and the first will be last. Meaning that we're not supposed to be thinking about how much we're going to get and how powerful or prestigious we are going to be. We're supposed to be the servant of all, and that's what Jesus says. Jesus even takes a child and puts him on his knee and says, "Look at this child. If you welcome this child, you welcome me." And we might think that children are the greatest. I know that I think my children are the greatest. But back in Jesus' time, children were thought of as lower on the social ladder. They were supposed to serve their parents. They were supposed to serve their elders. They weren't that important. So when Jesus says about this child, you're supposed to serve all, even these, Jesus is flipping everything on its head. The first will be last, and the last will be first. You're supposed to serve even those who you think are the least. Think maybe about a movie theater and going to the movie. You're last in line. Not because you got there late, but because you did the right thing. And everyone who came, you said, no, you go first. No, you go first and you get the best seat in the house. You go before me. No matter what that person looked like, whether you thought they were important or not, whether society said they were important or not, no, you said, let them go first. But then imagine that the movie theater owner comes around the back and through the back door and taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, you're doing the right thing. Because you're last, you'll be first." And he takes you the back way around into the theater so that you can have the best seat in the house. That's what Jesus is saying. The first shall be last, and the last shall be first. And he wants us to be that way because Jesus himself is that. He didn't want all the power. He didn't want the popularity or fame or prestige. No, he came to be the servant of all. He came so that we might be first, even though it meant him being last. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last.